So I appreciate you, first of all, Sean, letting me come on the show. I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you're doing, because I think the more we can talk about the bottoms in our lives and the more we can talk about our struggles, the less shame is wrapped around them. And it ends up being more empowering to people so they can start moving beyond whatever the life situation is right at that point in time. For me, my story starts when I was 7 years old. And a classmate of mine after school one day, for lack of a better word, enticed me into the woods on the school property. And before I knew it, Bobby was raping me. And not just once. I didn't realize the power of the last words he was going to speak to me. And he left through one end of the woods and I left to the other when I heard my mom calling me. And Bobby's last words to me were, "Don't say anything." What I didn't realize is that was going to end up being a 15-year-old secret from me.
Thanks for stopping by the Nowhere to Go But Up podcast. I'm the host of the show, Sean Dustin. If this is your first time listening, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. It's good to have you with us today. There are a couple of ways that you can help support the show. One of which is, if you know somebody out there who would benefit, family, friends, from listening to this show or an episode in this show, send them over. I'd be happy to have them as listeners. Also, you can subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform. And if I'm currently not available on the platform you listen to, send me an email and I will try to get added to it. I have merchandise available now, hoodies, t-shirts, mugs, and other items. This is another way you can help support the show, and the show will get a portion of the proceeds. You can find direct links to iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, merchandise, and anywhere else we are online at the bottom of the show notes. Go to the Linktree link, and that will take you to all the ways to connect to the show. One last thing is if you want to be a guest on the show, think you have a story that other people would benefit from listening to, you hit a bottom in your life that you want to share, hoping that other people don't have to go through the same thing that you did, head on over to the Linktree, go to my scheduling page, choose a time, fill out the guest form, and we'll go from there. Today, my guest is Sue Boles. Sue is a self-published author of a book called This Much I Know, The Space Between. I had a good conversation with Sue. She has had some trauma in her life, and her perspective is very interesting, and I have a lot of respect for her and what she's been through and how she's been able to persist in life and keep going despite the odds and the situations that she's found herself in. Sue will be a guest speaker at the Mental Health Summit May 5th through 7th. And she's also given us a discount lifetime all access pass. In the show notes, you'll be able to go down there, hit the link, and it will give you all the details. You can find her book on Amazon. That link will be there as well. And then there's also another summit because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So on May 18th, she is a part of a summit called Dare to Speak Up. If you want more information on that, text Next Step to 31996 and respond with your email to receive the link when it's available. You can also text Next Step to 31996 for info on both summits and to join the Hump Day Help text list. And that's a midweek on Wednesdays, I believe. You get a text from Sue, which it's like kind of a push you forward deal. And with your email, you'll receive 2 free chapters of her book. So without further ado, let's get to the show. So hi, this is Nowhere to Go But Up podcast, and I'm your host, Sean Dustin. Today I'm talking with Sue Boles, and Sue is a self-published author of a book titled This Much I Know, The Space Between. And then also your I don't know if you answered my
I had two posts. I had one for bottoms and life struggles, and I had one for authors. So I imagine you answered the one for authors, but you also have plenty of stuff that fit in with the bottoms and life struggles and circumstances that you've gone through. I see you have quite a few traumas that you've gone through in your life. So go ahead and the floor is yours.
Yeah, I may have responded to both of them, hard telling, or it may have been the bottom, whichever one it does cross both bridges. So I appreciate you, first of all, Sean, letting me come on the show. I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you're doing, because I think the more we can talk about the bottoms in our lives and the more we can talk about our struggles, the less shame is wrapped around them. And it ends up being more empowering to people so that they can start moving beyond whatever the life situation is right at that point in time. For me, my story starts when I was 7 years old. And a classmate of mine after school one day, for lack of a better word, enticed me into the woods on the school property. And before I knew it, Bobby was raping me. And not just once. I didn't realize the power of the last words he was going to speak to me. And he left through one end of the woods and I left to the other when I heard my mom calling me. And Bobby's last words to me were, "Don't say anything." What I didn't realize is that was going to end up being a 15-year-old secret from me. And I didn't tell anyone until my senior year of college. So that in and of itself is a huge chunk right there. And I didn't realize the gravity of what happened for many, many, many years. As I wrote my book and told my story, I started to understand myself better. And I understand the trajectory that day set my life on. From that day, there were so many other things that happened. I grew up in an alcoholic home. My dad was an alcoholic. Before I say anything else, I have to say I'm so dad-blasted proud of my dad because he was 29 years sober. Relationships have been restored and are very strong, and my dad is my biggest cheerleader. So having said that, I can now say that there was some emotional and mental abuse there, and that is typical in an alcoholic home. I realized that it was the alcohol talking and not my dad, because I see my real dad now, and he's a treasure. He's also flunked retirement 7 times, if that tells you anything about him. So, in addition to that, there was some other sexual abuse in high school, and it was a neighborhood kid. There was also, I was suicidal twice, and my folks divorced when they were after 34 years of marriage, and that was one of the times I was suicidal. The other time was junior year of high school. And even as recent as 2008, when I was in a depression again, I started dabbling with cutting. And then when I was in college, I developed an eating disorder. So there's been a lot of life's bottoms. But what I'm thankful for is the opportunity to share a little more about how that's not where I reside anymore. So
that's a tough one, man. Especially the young being that age. I have a little bit of experience myself with dabbling around in I don't even know what you would call it, because for me I just thought that that's what like all kids do. You know what I mean? You experiment, you play doctor, you play house. You see something at home, maybe you shouldn't have. Like for me, it's like I saw magazine pictures and hidden in like a fort we used to play in from the previous owners of that home. And, so I would see things and then I would go and try and mimic them, you know what I mean? Mimic what I saw when I was a kid, you know, and with friends or whatever. And, I never really thought anything of it. I think the thing that made me think more than anything was, cause sometimes, I was experimenting with little boys, little girls, we were just, I thought that was normal, and so that was really, I questioned the most. I'm like, oh my God, am I gay? Because I did these things. Mm-hmm. And I think that happens a lot more than people know. Mm-hmm. That's that type of behavior. And especially now, even more so when you have you have porn at your fingers. If you got a kid that has, access to a phone or, gets into something or, there's just a lot more ways to stumble into seeing images like that. And when you're young,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know what to do with that,
Right.
you know, and as a young boy, you definitely don't know what to do with that. And kids, if you've had one, you see how they try to act out whatever it is that they see.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they mimic and follow what they see or they learn. Man, it sucks that happened to you. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a tough thing. How much older was he than you?
He was about the same age. He was either 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And what one thing that has happened over time is that now that I'm on the other side of it, and first of all, I got to say, you know, if I say some things that are triggering for anybody, by all means, hit pause, hit stop, exercise some self-care, and take care of yourself. And if you're ready, then come back, because I never want anything that I share to trigger somebody else. And odds are that someone listening has either gone through or is going through something of any of these topics that we're going to talk about. So I just like to put that caveat out there. But one thing, you know, that over time is that now when I look back, I hurt for Bobby. I wonder what was going on in his life at 7 and 8 years old. And this is in the 70s, that he would know anything about this, because first of all, it was not on the radar. It was not discussed. And it certainly was not a topic of conversation for first graders or in the homes of first graders. So there had to be something going on in his life, just like you were talking about. And unfortunately, I was the one he preyed on. But going back to a point you made about just general childhood curiosity, I really didn't start dealing with the rape in terms of really digging into it and working through it all until just 6 years ago in 2014. So that tells you how long it took to be able to get to that point. But in the course of that, one of the things that I had to work through with my counselor was that the rape was not my fault. And even though it happened so many decades ago, all the emotions and all the thoughts that any survivor deals with, no matter when it happens, I was still dealing with. And I love my counselor. I've been with her now for over 12 years, and she's phenomenal. And one of the things that she did as we were dealing with it, she would give me homework each week. And one week, her homework was to look myself in the mirror 10 times a day for a week and say out loud, the rape was not my fault. And it wasn't good enough to say it was not my fault. I had to name it, because I liked using the word it because it was just very general. And that was the hardest thing to do at the start. And one of the things she had to work through with me was that childhood curiosity is normal. And just because I was a curious 7-year-old does not mean I asked for anything. The only person that did anything wrong that day was Bobby. That is the only person. And it is solely his responsibility. I hope his life changed, but now, you know, I'm to the point now where I'm able to share my story to help somebody else, because I have a responsibility with my story. Yes, I've had a lot of things go on in my life. And for the longest time, I was really hacked off at God about it all. But now, as I've come to peace with things, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't make anything right. But now that I've done the hard work of healing, I now have a responsibility to help the person behind me. I'm sure we'll talk about the book and our website and stuff, but my website's called mystepahead.com. And the whole premise of it is that you only have to be a step ahead to help the person behind you. So my responsibility is to help somebody who's just maybe a step or two behind me in their healing journey, while I'm still reaching out for somebody else to help me. But then, you know, it's a continual process, and it's a continual conversation, so to speak. So, you know, yeah, it sucked. There's a lot of stuff that has sucked in life. But like I said, now I have a responsibility to do something with it now.
Yeah, I feel the same way you do. I've been through quite a bit. for the longest time, for at least about 15, 20 years, I just kept running into the same walls constantly over and over again, and not realizing that I have to go right or left. And, I would it just seemed like it was a never ending, labyrinth of challenges. A lot of them though were self-inflicted on my part. They were my decisions and my, actions that got me into the trouble that I was in. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's hard to, how come traumas in general are just crazy how they imprint on people, when it happens when you're young, whatever it is.
Well, and I didn't realize, that day, like I said, I didn't know what happened. I knew something wrong had happened, but I didn't have the words. And because it wasn't on the radar, it wasn't on anyone's list to ask. When I was 45 minutes late, bless her heart, my mom came looking for me because she was scared her daughter was missing. She loved me enough to come looking for me. But she didn't know to ask, and I didn't know what to tell her. So, I didn't have the words. The way I phrase it, Sean, is that my emotions were frozen in time that day. And the longer you're in the freezer, the thicker the ice gets. So when you start off, when you start on a path and you're already off base, the longer you go, the further off base you get. So everything else that happened after that day was already on a faulty foundation. So I was needy. I was insecure. I was angry. I was an angry girl. There was somebody in 8th grade who wrote in my little photo book. So to the girl who's always mad. Mm-hmm. And I did not realize how right she had it. Yeah. So she was very perceptive at 8 years old, or in 8th grade. But I didn't realize a lot of things were tied to that because of my insecurities, my need to be seen so that I felt I had value, because I didn't feel I had any value and I didn't feel I had any worth. So my worth, my value became in being the perfectionist and being the goody two shoes and being the teacher's pet and getting the good grades and being in theater and chorus and playing basketball and running track in college and doing all those things, because if I was seen, then I had worth, and if I had worth, I mattered. And I didn't have all that tied together until the last few years. And also, those are some things that I learned about myself as I wrote my book. I wrote it and I was like, I just started learning things about myself that I hadn't put together until then. So it was fun to write it and learn those things, and make things make sense. Again, it doesn't make them right. Nothing will ever make them right. But it's what we do with them once we deal with them. We can redeem them.
The one thing that you said that kind of stands out a little bit is, when he said, don't tell anybody. Mm-hmm. In order for him to have known to say that must have been said to him by whoever by whoever was doing that to him.
That's a good point. I never thought of that.
Because when you're that young, you don't know to say, don't tell nobody, because how do you know that that's wrong?
Yeah. Yeah. And he knew it was wrong.
And so the only way that you're going to know that was wrong is if somebody who's done that to you and showed you how to do that said the very exact same thing to you. And so
that's true. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to my mind. Is that, he must have had somebody doing that to him. He, just did the same thing. And that's the pattern. That's the pattern for all abuse. That's the pattern for mental abuse. That's the pattern for physical abuse, for sexual abuse. Yep. When something is done to you at a young age, you instinctively just do it to somebody else. You recreate the trauma in somebody, to another victim.
The abused becomes the abuser. Yep.
Yeah. And then hurt people, right?
That is actually the first line in my book. They were hurt people hurting their kids. Yeah.
But it's true, and I fall victim to that. I mean, I grew up in a household where I didn't have the best example of what a loving, healthy relationship was. And I, found myself in my last most of them, but, as recent as my last one, about a little over a year ago, maybe a year and a half now, being the same person that I didn't want to be, from what I saw growing up. And I'm not saying my dad was a bad person. He was just struggling with his own, whatever he was struggling with and trying to figure out, he's nothing like that now. But,
Right.
we go through periods in our life when maybe we don't know who we are or how to be, or, who knows what was in his past. I never really asked him or, sat down and had a conversation about it. That's a hard subject to broach with somebody. You know what I mean? Because if somebody's not ready to talk about that kind of stuff, then they're never going to be open to the conversation.
Right.
I'm pretty open and transparent about everything. I mean, just what I just said. I mean, I would never have thought of saying that publicly, probably a year ago. I'd been like, oh my God, people are going to think I'm gay. I played with little boys, but I mean, look, man, things are the way that they are. And, we have to figure ourselves out. And like you said, and be willing to talk, because I'm guarantee you that there's people out there, just like me, that have done the same things, that maybe they may feel like, shame and like I was a bad person for doing this. And, we just have to figure out how to move beyond the shame of certain things and be able to talk about it and,
Right.
Process. In order to understand other people, you really have to understand yourself, because it's in understanding yourself that you become empathetic,
Right.
to what other people may be struggling with.
Right. Right. And that, in essence, we have to get past ourselves, or if you want to sound harsh, get over yourself.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds harsh, and I don't mean it to be. And I would never want to be told get over it. And I pray to God I never tell somebody to get over it, because you cannot get over it. You have to deal with it. You cannot just push it aside. I'm living testimony of that, because I tried for so many years. When The Secret came out, my senior year of college, it was in a conversation with my dean of students. And after I left his office, I was walking back to the student union. I felt like I had a scarlet letter on my forehead, like everybody suddenly knew. Nothing had changed, but just because it was out. The only way to heal is to go through the mountain. You cannot go around it. You can't. You have to go through it. And only by going through it are you able to get over the mountain. So, saying get over it, I mean get over the mountain. Get over the healing mountain to the other side. But you can't just climb over it. You have to go through it. And that journey is painful, and it is gut-wrenching, and it is probably one of the most courageous things you will ever do if you start. But it is not for the faint of heart. I can't tell you how many times I wanted to quit. How many times I had conversations with my counselor about just bailing out. I wasn't sure if I was like, and yet there was something that wouldn't let me quit, because I knew at some point in time, it might be years later, I'd end up right back in the counselor's office. Because when I started this journey with Amanda, I told her, if we're going to do this, I'm not quitting until we're done. I am not starting this process again. And I've had to remind myself of that at certain times. But I'm so thankful I hung in there. And even now, just the things we're dealing with, it still hurts a little bit, some of the things that are coming up. But it's also stuff that we couldn't have gotten to now if we hadn't done all the other digging.
Yeah, when things come up now, at least you have somewhere to put it. You know what I mean? You have a shelf to where you can process it, and okay, this goes over here.
Yeah.
I know where this goes.
Yeah.
Or you start to recognize triggering things. You start to recognize the things or places that are not healthy for you.
Right. And I have a bigger toolbox. That's the best way to phrase it. when I started with Amanda, we spent a number of years just dealing with current stuff. And she told me that we had to get me stronger in the present before we could go to the past. And, I had boundary issues like you would not believe. I let people walk all over me because I didn't think I had worth, because I didn't think I had value. So if you don't think you have value in somebody else's eyes, you certainly don't have it in your own eyes. And it shows in your behavior. So it was, it was a hard process, having some hard conversations and having to start break out of that. But for me, the real healing came in 2014. There was a retreat program I was involved with, and that's where things turned for me. I'm a Christian, and there was a Christian musician named Rich Mullins, and those listeners who might be familiar with him, he wrote the song "Awesome God," which is a really big hit. Well, in 2014, they came out with a movie about his life called Ragamuffin, and after the movie was released and they did their tour across the country, the producers and the family and friends of Rich was killed in a car accident in 1997. The family and friends of Rich and the movie producer was talking about doing a retreat to carry on the conversations of the movie themes about family relationships and communication and reckless abandon and faith and the masks. A big thing was masks, and about masks that we wear and being authentic and vulnerable. And I went to that first retreat. That was the first time that I really openly shared my story, because that was the year that Amanda and I were just starting to dig into it. Up to that point in time, I'd pretty much been in denial about my story. I didn't like my story. And there was a lot of shame wrapped in my story. So I kept it to myself. And because I had all the tapes going of, it was my fault, and I screwed up, and I did this, and I should have done this, and why did I do that? And I had it all wrong. But because that's what was living in my brain, that's my reality I was living in. Well, I went from that retreat, I went in pretty broken. And one of the staff members, who's now a friend, said that she described it as that retreat was kind of like a Hail Mary pass for me. And since this is the NFL draft's going on, that's a good analogy. It was like a Hail Mary pass to believe that maybe I had worth and that other people could love me and that God could love me. And I went from starting that weekend calling myself the holy exception, that everything was good for enough for everybody else but me. I was too far gone. I screwed up too much. I went from that in 3 days to being able to say that Jesus Christ is absolutely crazy about me. And I never believed that before. And what happened in that course of that weekend was I met a bunch of other broken people who were tired of playing the same games I was playing, and tired of wearing the masks and trying to make people think that I was somebody that I wasn't. And it became a safe place where I could let that mask down. And I could let myself be broken for the first time. And for me, that had a whole lot of tears to it. But as I found that safety with these people, I've gone back on these retreats every year. And each year it's grown. First year, I went, and that's kind of what I talk about in the second half of the book. It's called the space between. It talks about that healing journey. The book's, as you said, it's called This Much I Know, the Space Between. And where the title came from is This Much I Know is my story. All of us have our story. It's one thing no one can ever take from us is our story, because it's our story. No one else has lived it. They might have watched it, but they didn't live it. And there's a big difference. So this much I know is our story. And the space between talks about that healing journey. And to read something off the back cover of the book, it says, when we're talking about our stories, the space between is that gap, that time of questioning and anger and confusion and doubt and whatever else you can think of. It's the gray area of uncertainty, of wondering what the point is. And I think that describes that healing journey of something's driving me. I'm not satisfied with something, but what the heck is the point of all this? And trying to find that answer. So the second half of the book talks about that journey, the things I learned. And the first thing was having to come out of denial and own my story. And the second thing was having to grieve my story. And then I think there's things we don't always talk about. But when there's been hurt in our lives, that needs to be grieved. You can't just blow it off, because to blow it off is to minimize it. And that's whatever happened is not worthy of being minimized. It was tragic. It was traumatic. It was wrong. And there are feelings tied to that need to be expressed and let go of. So I went from denial to owning my story to realizing that I had worth, and realizing that I have value and that I am valuable. And then with that, moving on to sharing my story. And that's what the book became. It was a whole process, to get through that healing mountain, to go from that brokenness to now I have a responsibility. And it's been fun. I wouldn't wish the events on anybody, but the healing it's been painful. It's been long. And at the same time, it seems so crazy short in the last 6 years. If you had looked at me in 2014 and said I'd be doing podcasts and speaking at mental health summits, virtual summits, and speaking at state conferences and all this stuff, I would have laughed you out of town. Said, who, me? I don't have anything worthy to say. And now, there's just all kinds of stuff opening up, and that's what I want to do, is just encourage people who are still in that process. I'm still in the process. I'm just a further step or two down the road. But I just want to encourage people that it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to be vulnerable and authentic, and to say, you know what, life just sucks right now. And I'm barely hanging on by a thread, but I'm still hanging on, so help me out. That's where I was. I looked at a friend, the story I tell in the book, and it's if someone says, what advice do you have for somebody who's starting out? This is the advice I give them. I worked at a sports camp in Missouri for 5 summers, a place called Kanakuk Christian Sports Camp. Best 5 summers of my life. Never thought working in a hot kitchen was going to be so much fun. And met a musician friend named Billy Sprague out there. But Billy and I kept in contact a number of years, and then we lost contact. His fiancée was killed in a car wreck on the way to surprise him at a concert, because he was a Christian musician. He found out right before he went on stage. So obviously, he was neck deep in grief. And she peeked out from behind a truck to try to make a pass and got hit. So he went through a lot. He was suicidal. He was not in good shape at all. And we reconnected on this trip. And I said, I need to learn from something you've been through. And we sat and talked for an hour and 15, hour and a half, last day of the trip. I said, how do you go on living when all you want to do is die? That's the point I was at. It was when my parents were divorcing. We'd done an intervention on my dad. And my heart was frozen. I was just frozen. And we talked, and he shared about something a friend of his had told him when he was in his grief. And it was he would go through the airports, and his friend said, watch your feet. Watch your steps. And each step, tell yourself, you're one step closer. I can do this. One more step, one step closer. And he had me do that on the way down to the slopes that last day. And my first thought was, it is a long journey, and I am not going to make it. That was 1991. And here we are, 2020. That's my encouragement to people. Because Billy's last phrase to me was simply, that's all I know to tell you, Sue, step by step. And that's what my speaking is about. That's what I'm about now, is helping people take that next step. The website is My Step Ahead. And it came from a teaching at church where the pastor was saying, what does it help? So does it take? What do you do? What's it take to help the person behind you, or the person to help somebody? And it was simply, you only need to be a step ahead. That's where this whole thing came from. You only have to be a step ahead to help the person behind you. So if someone is out there struggling, what is that next step? What's the next step for you? It doesn't have to be a giant leap. It could be moving one toe, one length. What is that? Maybe it's reaching out. Maybe it's having that hard conversation. Maybe it's just giving yourself permission to cry once, and just to start to embrace everything that's going on. But whatever it is, take that step, because you are worth it. You have value. You have purpose, and there's a reason that you are on this planet. And your story isn't done. My story is not done. But each chapter gets to be a little more exciting with a little more light to it. And that's what I want to do, is just spread some encouragement and some hope and let somebody know that somebody's cheering for them.
That's a good way to look at it. It's a good message. I think that at the end of the day, I mean, really, we all just want to be better than we were yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you got kids, you got a family, you just want to take care of your family, you want to take care of your kids, you want to give them a better life than you had, show them opportunities that maybe you didn't have, show them the right way to do things if you've been doing them the wrong way. There's a meme that was going around that's really, it's one that I really like. It says, instead of trying to give your children the life that you wish you had, which is, money and, all these gifts
Mm-hmm.
and toys and everything else, show them, instead of trying to show them that, show them all of the things that you wish you had known instead.
That's good.
So, I mean, like, kind of like where we're at now, show your kids, that, hey, don't always take everything for face value. Don't believe everything you see. Don't believe everything you hear.
Mm-hmm.
There's forces out there that, will lead you down the wrong path,
Mm-hmm.
in whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I'm at, in my life now. And same with you. I'm just trying to, provide something that will, give value to people, but also express the stories of other people like yourself, me, and anybody else who's been on my show that has been through some, horrendous, in some cases, situations. Mm-hmm. And it really, I mean, who is anybody else but the person who's sharing or have gone through it to determine whether or not it was horrendous or not? You know what I mean? Those
Right.
hills that you were talking about, those mountains,
Mm-hmm.
what your mountain may seem small to me, but that's your mountain. You know what I mean? I'm not you. I don't know what it felt like to go through your shoes and walk through your shoes, just like you probably, don't know what it's like to be in mine.
Right.
What's hard for you may not be hard for me. What's hard for me may not be hard for you, but
Mm-hmm.
it's your story.
Exactly.
You went through
Exactly.
it. And nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can minimize that. They can try, but
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, it's really, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It matters what you think and
Mm-hmm.
what it's going to take for you to become a better person and a whole person in the end. Right.
Right. And nobody goes through that alone. Nobody gets there alone. I think the a lot of times, the very first step to healing is to reach out. It really is just to reach out. And I just want to say, I want to encourage people, if anything we're talking about resonates with you, and you think maybe you want to reach out for some help, you want to find somebody to talk to. If you're feeling suicidal, maybe you want to pick up the hotline. Whatever it is. I had an eating disorder. I have an eating disorder. I'm in recovery for it. You're struggling with that, anything like that, the first step to help is reaching out. I just want to encourage you to pick up the phone. Do a Google search if you need to. Just call your local emergency number. They will connect you with anybody. If you're not sure who to turn to, email me through my websites. I'd be more than happy to listen and more than happy to try to connect you with local resources. My Step Ahead started out as the website started out as an eating disorder recovery encouragement website. And it quickly morphed into just mental health issues in general, because I have had a lot of them. And that's what I want, is just to encourage and empower other people to take that first step. Because it leads to some pretty amazing things. But nobody can take that step except you. He said, yeah, you got to surround yourself with the support, and those people are in your corner, that will value you, and value your story, and value the time and respect as long as it takes for that story to come out. And I think that's the other thing, is you cannot force it and it can't be rushed. It has to come out when it's ready, when you're ready.
And you also have to be willing to remove the people that are in your corner that aren't really on your team.
And that's the hard part.
You know,
and it gets back to those boundaries.
Yeah.
It gets back to those boundaries. But yeah, if there are people who are beating you down and getting in the way of what you're trying to accomplish for your life, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is somehow draw that boundary. And nobody can tell you what that looks like. Nobody can tell you what that means. Because sometimes those are hard boundaries to draw, especially with family members. That's why the intervention was so gut-wrenching. For anyone who's not familiar with it, when you get to the point with an alcoholic where you're doing an intervention, you're in essence setting them up. You've got somebody who has influence in their life. You're setting them up to bring them to a secret meeting that they don't know about. They walk in, and there are influential people in their lives, usually family members, who are there, and they're basically going to tell you how your usage, be it alcohol, drugs, or whatever, has affected them. And they're, in essence, giving you an ultimatum. And they're saying, if you don't get treatment, then this is what's going to happen from me. And when I went into that, I had to tell my dad, and you have to be ready to live by it. You can't just say it, you got to be able to live by it. And I put my relationship on the line with my dad. And I said, Dad, if you don't get help, I won't come visit you anymore. And that was so hard. But you know what was so cool? Is that by the end of the intervention, Dad agreed to go to treatment. And out of everybody he could have ridden with, he chose to ride with me. And that just meant the world to me. You know, and so you have to be able to live by whatever boundary you're drawing. But again, it takes support to be able to sort that stuff through too.
Yeah, and that's a learned thing as well. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, if you're in the family, you know, that you're in, if you have a lot of dysfunctionality in it, you're not going to learn a lot of those things, and boundaries, codependency boundaries and all of that stuff get thrown into the mix, and you know, you get a skewed view of how to set those boundaries. One of the things that I would tell some people that I talking about dating, like I'm single, so I talk to people about dating situations, online dating, and some of the women that I've talked to, you know, they find out I have a podcast, and what's it about, and this and that, personal development, self-improvement, and they start complaining about, God, well, guys, they just want this, and all this and this, and I'm like, well, have you trained them as to what you want? I mean, have you told them what you want? Because a lot of people have it in their head. They have ideas of what they want, but they don't know how to articulate it. They don't know how to tell somebody that, look, I'm not going to put up with X, Y, and Z, and there's nothing, there's no more to it. All right. So
Right.
if you do this, and that, there's a good chance that, you don't have my best interests in mind, and I don't want to, I'm not going to, pursue anything else with you.
Right.
And if you can do that, a lot of the times, most of the guys that are not there for the legitimate reasons will remove themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know
the
what I
problem
mean?
will take care of itself.
Yeah, the problem
Yeah.
will take care of itself. They're going to realize, okay, well, this person's going to be a little bit more difficult for me to get what I want out of them. So let me go find some low hanging fruit that I can go deal with. I mean,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah,
And
it makes sense. And I think when people get stuck in that pattern of letting people take advantage of you, and I'm not just talking physically, I'm talking emotionally or any financially or any other way, it comes back to what we believe about ourselves. If I believe that I don't have a lot of value, I'm going to let people walk all over me, because my security comes from that person being in my life, or my security comes from being around that person or in that group or that situation. And if we cut ourselves off from that, we're left having to deal with our insecurity, and that is not a comfortable thing to deal with.
Yeah.
But it's a root issue. It's a root issue to a whole lot of things. So I think when we are frozen and we can't make those choices, I think a lot of it comes down to that insecurity whatever form that takes as you kind of dig into it. And we don't like having to come face to face in the mirror with ourselves. I think this pandemic is probably doing that a lot. People are having to deal with themselves because they don't have the activity to hide behind. They're not running out all the time, keeping themselves busy and not having to deal with their stuff. And nobody likes to deal with their stuff. When I was, the way I describe it with my eating disorder is that the activity for me is my number. And honestly, I'm kind of into that right now. Because if I was busy, I didn't have to think. And if I don't have to think, I don't have to feel. And if I don't have to feel, I don't have to deal with my stuff. And that was the progression of how I ended up with my eating disorder, because my emotions were frozen in time when I was 7. I didn't know how to deal with them. I couldn't really even tell you what a real emotion was and what I was feeling. And somehow my brain turned that towards myself. And I have to say, eating disorders are not diets gone wrong. They are not about vanity, and they are not about body image. Eating disorders are biologically based mental health issues, and they are the most lethal of mental health issues. Not only because of the death from the eating disorder itself, but also from the damage that it does to the body. Even if a person is no longer active in their eating disorder, it doesn't mean they haven't damaged their body already, and you can get complications from that. So I think with this pandemic, and people are having to stay home, and they don't have their activities to hide behind, they're having to deal with their stuff. That's why they're seeing the domestic abuse go up, and the verbal and mental abuse, and assault and everything. You start to see so many people writing about that, and suicides going up. And I think one of the things, something I'm doing this weekend, actually, last week in April, starting tomorrow, I'm taking a 3-day course. And at the end of it, it's an intensive program, I will be a certified professional life coach. And I'm excited for that. And one of the reasons, I've been thinking about it, but one of the reasons I wanted to pull the trigger now was because of what I just said. As people are in this pandemic now and coming out of it, people are saying all along, we're going to have the mental health repercussions of this for many, many, many years to come. And not just, from the finances and just everything, because people they're left with nothing in their hands but their stuff, and it's uncomfortable stuff. And excuse me, I want to be one of the helpers. I want to be that person that can come alongside and help you take your next step. So, yeah, I think, when you have those things in your life and you're not sure how to deal with boundaries or communicate them, it does reflect how you view yourself and your own opinion of yourself, even though people don't like to put it that way. And when you come face to face with it, it's not always pleasant. And then you have a choice to make. Am I going to stay stuck where I am? Or am I going to take the bold step and take a step forward? And what's it going to take to do that? It kind of becomes a gut check time.
Yeah, there's there's those memes that are out there that say that, all right, well, here's how I see myself, and then here's how everybody else sees me. Because we all have an idea of what we put in our own minds as to who we are. We want to think that, oh, well, I'm this and I'm that, and I'm very this and I'm very that, and sometimes it's just not. You don't have the proper view of how you are in life. And that I came across that myself when I tried to run for a position in my local. I'm a part of a union. I'm a tradesman, and I'm very involved in my union, or I was up until the pandemic thing. But I went for an office, right? And I didn't really understand what politics was about. I know what the politics, the national politics are, but I didn't realize how close that they really are from the national to unions. They're all pretty much the same. It's a popularity contest. And I had merit. I, did everything, dotted all the T's, dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, and, had the perfect resume to slide into this spot. Right. And, I thought for sure thought for sure I was going to get this, man. I mean, I've never put anything that much work into anything legitimate that I've ever done. You know, I put a lot of effort into illegal shit. But you know, this was like the first time I'd ever like, you know, all right, well, this is something I want to do. I'm going to, you know, I did everything I was supposed to, and I lost. And that was tough because I had an idea of what I brought to the table and who I was in this union. And it wasn't even close. You know, there was 3 people that were in it. Yes, but I had the lowest numbers of the 3. And so I kind of had to, I mean, that was a gut check, man. It was like, oh man, maybe you aren't who you think you are.
Right.
You know, and so I had to, I mean, I licked my wounds for a while for that one, man. It was a blow for sure, man. And I didn't really know how to deal with it. And I was quiet for a while, and I didn't know if I wanted to continue. I didn't know if I wanted to continue to be involved in this, because it's like, well, you know, if this isn't merit based, then, you know, screw this. But I mean, that was just my defense mechanisms popping out, you know, trying to fight the fact that, okay, well, I didn't want to look at the fact that, well, you know, maybe you're not that likable. You know,
that's a hard one.
Yeah.
That's a hard one.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, fuck, man, how not likable. I mean, shit, I think I'm funny. I think this, I think that. And so I had to just re-look at everything I was doing. And, you know, luckily I've been through enough change in my life and been through so many different things, from prison to, you know, whatever hardship you can imagine somebody putting on themselves. I've probably been there. And so I had the tools to be able to navigate my way through it and come back out of it, and, you know, take some time away and think and, you know, okay, let me put this into perspective, figure it out and regroup. And what do I need to do now to either, if I'm going to continue on this path, then I need to figure out how to be more likable, first of all. And, you know, where am I falling short? Am I in, you know, and then I just had to figure it out. And like, I'm great at doing this, but when it comes to like dealing with people in front of my face, you know, sometimes I just don't want to be bothered with them, you know?
Right. And it's a process of just getting to know yourself and realizing where you're slotted best. You know, if the union position is very much a representative position and very much having to be interacting with people, and that's just not how you're wired, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But it's a process to kind of figure out, okay, is this just my personality? And if so, am I okay with that? Or is this something I really, really want, and I need to learn how to be able to play that role while still being true to who I am, and so I don't feel like I'm faking it. So it's a process. It's a process, and you know, anytime we come up with those kind of things, you know, what we do with the things we're learning through that can be uncomfortable, because, you know, we're talking about this, where you come face to face with you. You know, you're like, oh, I thought I was likable, and they're saying I'm not. So is that feedback? I'll take the feedback and I'll evaluate it. And is that something I really agree with or not? Or when I look at the whole body of work, is it more or less of, that's just not fitted for me because how I'm wired, this doesn't slot into that position. And it's really not a slam on me. It's helping me realize that, you know, I'm just not slotted for that position. You know, the mark of a good employer is that their employees are slotted in the right position.
Yeah.
You know, if you hate numbers, you don't want to be in the bookkeeping department. You know, if you're a tradesman, you probably don't want to sit there and do customer service, you know, answer the phone and enter orders. It's about knowing how you're wired and having those people slotted in the right positions. But the process to come to that conclusion and to know what role you play, how you best fit into the picture, it takes some gut checking and some hard conversations at times. And it can lead to some self-doubt and kind of wondering, am I screwed up? Why don't people like me? Those kind of things. Is it my personality? And what do I need to do to be liked? Or, you know what? I'm to the point now that this is who I am. Take me or leave me. And it's just the whole process.
Yeah, for sure. I still haven't figured out whether or not I want to continue with it. We'll see after this pandemic thing clears up and everybody starts going back to work again, and
right.
I get back involved and see where we're at. But, yeah, I mean, I really enjoy doing this. I like doing this. I like, helping people out. I like listening to people. I like talking to people. It helps me to get rid of some of my stuff too. I always tell people that, I think my podcast helps me more than it helps anybody else.
Right. And maybe there's some kind of ombudsman program where you can help be a liaison to somebody and listen and help and speak out for them. So there's all kinds of different ways things can come into play.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, we're almost at about an hour here. That goes by quick, huh?
It does. But it's been a good conversation. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. So why don't you go ahead and plug everything that you want. All the stuff's going to be in the show notes. Is anywhere that you can be found or that you want to promote will also be in the show notes as well. So.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, I think first and foremost, the book we've been talking about is This Much I Know, The Space Between. It is on Amazon and Kindle, so they can just find that really easy there. I've got a few different websites. You can reach me at mystepahead.com. And then, I also have a speaker page, so it's SueBoles.com. I can get you all these links if you don't have them already. One thing I do is I have something I send out via text just called a Hump Day Help. So if people are interested, just getting little Wednesday encouragement, just to kind of get you through the second half of the week, they can text Next Step to 31996. Next Step to 31996. And I'll be happy to add them to the list. And if they respond with their email, I will then also send them 2 free chapters to my book. I've got a couple of speaking gigs getting ready to come up. I'm doing a lot of podcasts, which are fine. Pandemics are great for podcasts. that's for sure. But May 18th, May 5th through 7th, there is a mental health summit online, and I'm speaking at that. There's about 26 speakers. And also, again, if they text the 31996, I can also send them, I have a discounted registration link. Right now, it's an all-access pass. I think it's for $97. The price is lifetime access as they add more content to it. And then the price goes up day of the summit, and after the summit, it's even more expensive than that. But I can get them that link if they would like that. And then there's another summit that just came across my desk. It's going to be May 18th, called Dare to Share. And that one kind of goes right in line with what we're talking about. And it's talking about wanting to empower people with the power of their story and helping get past the shame of trauma. So that one, again, just reach out to me, 31996, and I can get you the information on that one. I'm going to record my segment on that this next week. So I don't even have all the information on that, but I'm excited to be part of that. That one has got some pretty heavy speakers with it. Both of them do. The one May 5th through 7th. Actually, I got an email. It's also, it's in conjunction with a mental health, a new 501, a nonprofit mental health group. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So a lot is neat to be able to do this kind of stuff to really help draw attention to things that are going on and things that are going to be amplified now as a result of this pandemic. So I'm excited. And if there's something that somebody, they're looking for a speaker. There's a lot of virtual speaking webinars going on, just virtual speaking. So please reach out to me. Whatever I can do to help somebody, that's my next step ahead, is helping the person behind me. So social media is my step ahead: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So I just love people to follow along with me, and see what we can do to shake up the mental health world a little bit.
That's amazing. Yeah, I need to get involved in more speaking engagements myself. It's just it's a matter of finding them. I don't really look for a whole lot of stuff. I just kind of do my podcast. I talk to people, and hopefully something will pop up out of it at some point. Just got to keep doing the work.
Experience is good.
Yeah, just keep doing the work.
That's all you can do. That's all you can do. Because, things, I just started doing podcasts in January, and they have just exploded for me to a degree I never expected. So you never know what happens just by doing one, and suddenly things take off. So keep at it, Sean. Keep at it. You're doing great. Because you too have a story to share, and you've been through a lot. You have a lot of experiences that you can share to help other people. Maybe there's, once prisons open up again, there are a lot of groups that need volunteers in prisons.
Yeah.
And that's something you can relate to, and something you have to offer that a lot of people don't. You have a platform to stand on and be heard because you've been through it, and now you're on the other side. And you can, you've got a lot of opportunities with the things you've gone through already that a lot of people don't. It's a very special niche that you have that in on that others don't.
Yeah. You're right. Well, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate your time, your transparency, your honesty, your vulnerability, everything that you've showed today in this show. I want to thank you, and I appreciate it 100%. Hey, that's all we can do, man. We're here to help each other and to be better people than we were yesterday. And that's the bottom line.
But, yep. And I appreciate your time, Sean. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Bye, Sue.
Thanks for listening to the show, and thank you to Sue. That was a great story. Sometimes in life, it takes a while for you to find your purpose and your voice, but when you do, man, it's amazing to watch. And Sue is definitely going to be one of those to watch out for. Just a quick reminder, follow me on my Linktree. All my places, social media are there. Anywhere that you can rate, review, and subscribe will be there. Of course, Sue's places, everything that I spoke about in the intro will be in the show notes, along with her bio and a little bit more about her. And until next time, keep it 100, stay true to yourself. Everything else is just noise.